Danny, thanks for joining us today.
Sure.
Last time we were here, we talked about the U.S., but how does cargo theft differ in Mexico versus the U.S.?
Well, cargo theft in Mexico is practiced in a very different manner than it is in the U.S. First of all, in the U.S., cargo thieves avoid contact with the driver at all costs, whereas in Mexico, contact with the driver is pretty much the norm. In Mexico, they're also much more willing to employ violence or the threat of violence. And because of this, they're typically not as patient in waiting for an opportunity to steal unattended cargo.
If they aren't waiting for opportunities when the shipment is unattended, then what are they doing instead?
Hijacking. Hijacking is actually the primary method of cargo theft in Mexico.
Really? How's that usually done?
Well, if the thieves know what trailer they're targeting, they'll typically follow it to a rural area on a non-tolled highway where the law enforcement response is going to be a little bit slower. Then they're going to try to get it to pull over. They'll usually do this either by indicating that they see a problem with the tractor or trailer, or if they're not feeling quite as nice, they may brandish some firearms or even discharge them.
What if they don't already have a target selected?
Well, in that case, they do have a few options for selecting their targeted freight. They'd still be performing the same kind of forced pullover that I mentioned before, but they can target either by company markings or logos on a trailer, or they might use high security seals on the back of the trailer, which often indicate that there's high value cargo inside. Now, of course, if they're feeling particularly confident in any given area, they may actually set up a fake checkpoint instead.
What is a fake checkpoint?
Well, they typically appear like a normal checkpoint to most people at first glance, but what it is criminals will obtain or forge official-looking police vehicles and official-looking police uniforms, and they'll use that to set up a fake checkpoint in a rural highway. And what they'll do is they will just stop every vehicle that's going past, and most civilians, like I said, will not notice anything amiss. But the commercial vehicles, they'll actually have the opportunity to inspect their bills of lading and thereby select what cargo they're going to have pull over to steal.
And what happens to the driver at the checkpoint?
Well, typically the driver is going to be blindfolded and kidnapped along with the cargo. They're usually going to have him tied up in the cab of the truck, and they'll steal his wallet and his phone, and they'll usually drop him off in a rural location, typically far away from being able to make any phone calls to police, so that the response by law enforcement can be delayed. Because cargo thieves in Mexico will typically fence their cargo directly out of the trailer or container rather than moving it to an intermediary warehouse, getting it off of the major roads is as quickly as possible is critical to those thieves.
Do the criminals in Mexico focus on any particular products?
Well, the criminals in Mexico don't necessarily know exactly what they're going to be able to steal before they actually get a hold of it. So we don't get a lot of the same steal to order tactics that we see in the US. What they do steal is either what's easy to liquidate for them or what's going to just be prevalent on the roads. So we do see quite a bit of thefts of food and drinks, pharmaceuticals, electronics, and alcoholic beverages. But anything that's easy to sell is going to be a potential target in Mexico.
Are there any hotspots for cargo theft in Mexico?
Well, as I mentioned before, thieves are most comfortable operating on the rural highways that provide a longer law enforcement response for them. And those spots do change almost on a week-to-week basis. However, the primary hotspot for cargo theft in Mexico that always remains the same is surrounding Mexico City. Not particularly inside Mexico City, but on the highways that come to and from Mexico City, as well as the loop around Mexico City, does see quite a bit of cargo theft activity.
Are there any theft trends we can expect to see coming up?
Mexico is not subject to the same kind of seasonal trends that we see in other parts of the world, but we do know that their infrastructure is more vulnerable to issues due to natural disaster, and we do see a lot of stoppages or slowdowns at international border crossings because of civil unrest. Unfortunately, there's no way to really predict that at this time.
How can organizations prepare for the risks posed to their freight in Mexico?
Having people on the ground who can respond to a compromised shipment is an invaluable asset. And knowing when to deploy that asset versus traditional law enforcement networks or merely corrective carrier action is something that comes with knowledge and experience in the industry. We have all of these in spades at Overhaul, from LE Connect's global recovery network to our capable team of recovery specialists and our global operations centers. At Overhaul, we're here to make sure you know that your shipment is secure.
Overhaul's intelligence and response team is committed to bringing you the most up-to-date information on global supply chain risks and disruptions. To stay apprised of all the latest news, subscribe to our Supply Chain Intelligence and Response LinkedIn channel.